start doing something I love. But it's experiences like this where I get to stand in a beautiful space and have my work hanging on the walls and share it with people and have them respond to it in any way. That's what I really consider to be just the highest privilege as an artist. So thank you so much for being here. I'm sure Keith has made fun of the fact, and I'll probably for half the day, but I grew up in Vrba, Texas, and I've taken a lot of abuse for that fact, but I am same as you, went to Lamar University. The difference is art was not on my radar for a very long time, so I envy all of you, and congratulations. I wish I had come to it early in life, but you get to it however you get to it, and it shapes really who you are as an artist, so it's all okay. But I'm a self-taught artist. I'm committed to film and the traditional wet darkroom. I do all non-processing, printing and toning. And I've always collected curious oddities, I guess you would call these objects. And I've always been hypersensitive to my space and my surroundings, even before I really started to work as an artist. I think you could really say that I have kind of treated my own home as a giant life-size assemblage piece. And I had done a couple of solo shows a couple of years ago that had very strong installation components. And right after the second one, I decided to take a year off from any solo shows or any portfolio reviews. And for the first time, I thought, you know, I'd like to see what happened to me creatively if I didn't have the heat of something major like that to prepare for. And this is actually what happened in that time. This is about a year and a half time worth of work. So I had I knew Joseph Cornell's name and loved his work long before I ever found photography. And then I collected these objects. So I took this time off, and actually I'm going to start with this piece. I started working on this series called Drunken Poet's Dream, and it came about because I'd heard this song by Ray Wiley Hubbard. Do any of you know Ray Wiley Hubbard's music, who I adore? And I'd heard his recording of Drunken Poet's Dream a few years ago, and I was so struck by those three words together. And I really couldn't get them out of my head. I thought they were sort of tragic and wonderful at the same time. I started to think about how a big lightning storm is really uncomfortable and really beautiful at exactly the same time. Then I had to find something really personal and vulnerable about me in that concept for me to really flesh it out and know I could spend time with it. And I started to think about all the things in life that's true of. You know, loving someone is uncomfortable and beautiful. And having children is uncomfortable and beautiful. Being an artist is uncomfortable and beautiful. So standing here with you is uncomfortable. And so I knew that was something I could really sink my teeth into. And I started with a couple of the straight images that are still in the series that I felt were really important, like Art Scars over here. That's a wet plate collodions. A good friend of mine, S.L. Stevens, wet plate collodion artist, and her hands typically look just like that, Art Scar. So I started, you know, finding my way through the series, and then the most glorious thing. I had someone told me where I could find real birdlings, whole, intact, real birdlings. And the minute they told me, I straight away got the birdlings, and I get home. My kids are at school. I have nobody to work with. I have no good idea. I'm walking in front of mirrors, holding the wings in front of my eyes. Nothing was working. It looked terrible. And this image, without the wings, I made several years ago, and it was my daughter, and originally it was called Pissed Off Ballerina. And that print happened to be laying out in my office, and I walked in and laid the wings on the print, and it was just like the art gods, you know, sent the angels. I could hear singing over my head. It was like, oh my God, like, I loved it, and I had this whole new way I could work, where I could use my own prints as a backdrop or a stage to make a new negative. So I literally laid the print on the floor, wings on top of it, and just made a new negative. I shoot Hasselblad film 100% of the time. So So all of the layering that you see in the photographs, none of it's digital. I literally lay objects on the print, making a negative. Sometimes I hang the print and place the objects in front of it. So it's a very exciting time, and I now refer to it as my non-violent shooting rampage because I shot like crazy. I did it every day, all day, and made a lot of work. And so it's really exciting. I'm combining objects with my own photographs, really for the first time. And that is what organically led to my first assemblage piece, which I had no idea that was going to happen. But I'd always really been interested in encaustic. I kind of have this visceral response to good encaustic work whenever I see it, whether it be photography or painting. I always want to bite it. I never do. I haven't yet, but I have that urge, so really I'm drawn to it. And I didn't know how to do it, don't have time to take a class, but I gathered the materials, get up early one morning and thought, wouldn't it be cool to see what happens if you melt wax? And I did, and I kept going. The first block I made happened to fit into a vintage box I had, and I couldn't stop from that point. I had to finish the box. That piece is here, actually. It was thrilling. And I got up the next morning and made the second piece, which actually is in the permanent collection of the Museum of Fine Arts now. So that right away, I started, my biggest fear was that I would lose my footing in the world of photography if I started messing around with this assemblage work. That has not been the case. It's really exciting that it's gone. I can still stay in my medium and push myself a little bit. So I'm going to talk about just a couple of the pieces. This one is Memoir. And this was, I think, the most complex piece that I made. It took over a month, really, from start to finish. This is a vintage piano bridge. I cut every single piece of block by hand. You start with the substrate. And I have a blowtorch and, every kind of tool, Dremel, bit that it's girl power on crack, and I'm having a really good time kind of taking my art fate into my own hands. But in the way that my photo series, within each series, there is a story that always starts with the title and the words. And I build the story with each photograph. Each assemblage piece, I think, is just as narrative, but each piece is its own story. So as soon as I start to know I want to make a piece, sometimes it starts with the actual box itself or in this case, the bar, and I start to think about what visually could work. I keep all my materials visible so that I know what I have to work with. And I start pulling materials. Sometimes it starts with the image. But then immediately I start asking myself, what's the story, or what story are you telling in this piece? Because it starts to help me collect things that help me tell the story, that make sense together. Visually, I have to arrange them so it's compelling, but aesthetically pleasing to me. And then you have to figure out how are you going to fix them in place where it can go out in the world and hopefully live forever. I think my work is inherently feminine across the board. I would say I've made 2 masculine pieces in all of my time, and it was this piece, which I think of as more masculine than feminine, and then this piece right behind Catherine, which is called Measure of Man. But what was really fun for me was, it was a couple months after I finished Memoir, I was really excited about that piece, and I really wanted to make kind of a feminine response to Memoir, and this was my feminine response to that piece, and this piece is called Garter Belt, but the same vibe. And then I want y'all to be sure before you go to take a peek. It would be hard for everyone to get up here, but this one was really fun too. It's towards the end. This is actually a foam cabinet. We used to build foam I think foams were so spectacular many years before that they would build a beautiful cabinet that would suit the architecture style of the house. And so it's a foam cabinet. Filthy, out in the yard when I found it, hosed it off, and butterfly house. So, you know, when I started working on it, it felt like a house to me, and I started to think about how, like if you stumbled across a butterfly house in some hidden place in Paris, what would that place look like? I wanted it to feel magical and mystical, and it's fun to kind of go off on those tangents. So this is a fairly recent one. And the last one I think I want to mention is somewhat similar, and it's one of the smaller pieces. It's the last piece I made before coming here, and it's called Winter Solstice. And it's also really a diorama where I'm literally cutting with scissors my own prints and then piecing them together. I really am most intrigued with Drunken Poetry, the series, and with the assemblage work. I look for a way to take it offbeat just a little bit, so that brings in that element of being uncomfortable. So I like playing with scale where things don't quite make sense. And I also think with the series and the layering, collectively our eyes gotten very comfortable with Photoshop, and I think you get some sense if you spend some time with these composites photographically that are not Photoshop. You have to, it messes with the head a little bit, which I think is good. So do you have questions? Did I skip anything? It makes it more interesting for all of us if you have questions. So please ask.
Don't take it.
No questions?
Stone silence. You just did such a good job. You answered the question.
Jeffrey has a question.
Oh, yeah. The transition between just regular photographic image and now these three-dimensional boxes and spaces. The drive for doing that?
The drive for doing the assemblage work?
Yeah.
It was an accident. It really was. But I was saying, I think it was maybe before you came in, but I was saying, it's kind of the way I live. I really am very affected by space. I love moving things around. And it happened just because this was the first piece I made. And actually, I can pull it off and bring it over. Yeah. This one's called Faded from This World. And this was the first encaustic block that I made. And as soon as I finished making it and I was holding it in my hand, I thought, I think that is the exact size of this compartment of this vintage box that I have. And I took it over and it was. And I couldn't stop. I thought, oh my God, I'm about to make my first piece. And then I got up the next morning and made it. Yeah. So it was an accident. But it's really nice. Keith has had a huge impact on my work in the way that he has taught me how to think, particularly in the face of self-doubt. So one of the things that I hear that he has said to me over and over again is give yourself the freedom to fail, because it just takes you to what you're supposed to be going to. So I give myself the freedom to fail, and I follow my impulses and my instincts wholeheartedly, and it's working out okay right now. But it doesn't always. But yeah, so he's had a huge impact on me in that way. Anybody else? Questions? Y'all seeing good stuff today?
Oh, no, I just said you just.
Thank you. I don't really ever go looking for a certain object, but I do, anywhere I go, I'm looking for things that seem interesting to me. And then it's been really dear as the more I've started to make this work. People bring me things, people call me from wherever they are, or they text me pictures of objects that they think, and they'll say it's $5 because you use this, and yeah, so I've now had pickers. Yeah, and so it's pretty great. But once it started to take over my whole house, I have a vintage baker's rack that's just got tray after tray after tray, and I just keep all the objects on that so that I can, it helps to be able to see them. If you have to go digging through drawers to find your idea, it's not nearly as efficient. Just to be able to kind of scan everything and start to pull, from the story you're telling works really well. And with 3 kids in the house, being efficient is a good thing. When I first started and I had no system, I would know, oh my God, they're going to be home from school in 2 minutes, and it was like dangerous, stuff on, every kind of sharp object and drill and just minutia everywhere. So I've, once I knew I was going to keep doing it, I got a pretty tight system together. And I keep materials on hand all the time. Because sometimes you just wake up and you're ready to make something, It's going to be really well. Yes?
How much do you sort of pre-design in your head versus let the exploration and experiment do the work?
I don't pre-design at all, ever. It is constant experimenting and kind of just gut feeling, but I know when I get it. And it's really odd, I'm looking at it with my own eyes, I'm making it with my own hand, but at certain points through the entire process of making a piece, I will stop and take an image with the phone, an iPhone picture, because to see it all compressed on the phone as a photograph helps me even read it. You start to get too attached to it right in front of you, and then it's almost like a detached way of looking at it that helps me see it. And I use those kind of things a lot, just with my own photographs. If I'm printing in the darkroom or I'm trying to edit and I'm trying to assess a photograph that I've gotten very close to and it's almost like I can't see it anymore, I'll hold it up in a mirror because all of a sudden it becomes different. Or I will lay it on the table and look at it upside down, and then I can start breaking it down better. I don't know if everybody's brain works that way, but mine does, so that works really well for me.
Leads me to one. So would you say that once you've started one, you absolutely finish it? There's never any that you kind of go, I can't deal with this anymore, and stick in a closet and say, I'll deal with it later?
No, I always finish it.
You always finish it?
I always finish it. I would say I've had 1 failure, no, 2 failures, and they were very early on.
But then it got to the end where you said this is over. There's
No.
never a kind of,
Yeah.
I can't deal with this now.
Right, no, I knew that piece was not gonna be good. So I took it out in the yard and I burned it.
Again, there was an end. It was finished.
It was a performance piece.
Right.
So yeah, I stick it out and figure it out eventually.
Lori, I have a question. How
Sure.
did you come to this color of your toning? Did you go through different experiments, or you just hit that right on?
Thank you for asking that. Toning is my favorite part of the darkroom experience. I really love the color shift. This is not the only toning I do. I try and choose toning that really suits the concept. And in my mind, when Drunken Dream, to me, really brought up some sort of idea of history to me, like I thought of Hemingway. I just felt like it came from another time, and I wanted this toning to really speak to the passage of time. And this is a split between sepia and selenium, and several baths after the print's complete, so it's commitment. But I'm a tone freak, so.
It looks pretty consistent in the colors. You have a custom recipe for your.
And I'll send it to you. But it's hard. You have to figure out a paper that suits it. And I spent 6 months and ruined probably 150 prints getting to the point where I wanted it to be. At least.
Nice job. It's very consistent. I noticed that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, I hope y'all are seeing good work today. And I hope y'all are giving him a hard time. He deserves it.
We've had a wonderful time. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. It means the world to me.
I'll give her a hand.